awful thing. Hi, May. Hi, Sharon. So I've just muted everyone. I'm May and Sharon. I was just saying we're doing quite an easy class today. May, you'll probably be quite pleased to hear quite a lot of breathing, just because it's in a lot of places it's warm. Apparently in Cornwall not. So we're going to start just very simply lying on our backs and connecting with our breath. So for me, that would be bringing my hands onto the front of my body. You don't have to, but I just like to say whatever works for you in terms of connecting with your breathing. And yeah, so that's, we're gathering our attention into our breath somewhere in our body. So it's that process of settling down, of gathering our awareness into the breathing. And then just feeling how your body responds. So it is helpful to have the hands, I think, on the front of the body, because then you can feel how your body responds as you breathe in and as you breathe out. And just very much giving yourself the sort of time and space to settle down, to slow down, to connect with that inner flow of your breath. And as well as bringing our attention to our breathing today, perhaps a little bit more, we're also going to do some breathing exercises. But I think before we do that, we're going to move a little bit, but quite simply. So what I'd like you to do, just keeping this connection, this focus with your breathing, is you're going to take, let's see, I think at this point, maybe bend your knees and stand both feet on the floor. And you're going to take one arm up to rest on the floor by the side of your head. It doesn't need to be near to your head. It could be quite wide out to the side. So yeah, one arm. And let it rest on the floor. And then just come back to that focus on your breathing. So you've got your arm resting on the floor and you're just trying to give the weight of that arm down. You're noticing how it feels. And you're keeping very close, your awareness very close to the flow of your breath. So feeling the breath come in, feeling the breath leave you. And perhaps have a couple more cycles of breath with that arm resting on the floor. And then you're going to swap sides. So bring that arm back, maybe bring that hand back onto the front of your body. And then bring the other arm up to rest on the floor beside your head. So Sarah, hello, whenever you're there, we're just starting lying down with some breathing and some very simple movements. So we're going to keep it quite quiet today because of the heat. So you've got your second arm resting on the floor beside your head. And you just, again, try and have that arm in a place where it can feel heavy and settled. And it might be that this second arm is not quite as comfortable. Maybe fine. So you've got one hand on the front of your body. You've got the other arm by the side of your head. And you just try and give the weight of that arm onto the ground. Make sure your elbow is in contact with the ground. If it isn't, you might want to slide your arm out to the side a little bit more. So Sarah, we're lying with our knees bent and we've got one arm, we've got our focus on our breathing and one arm up by the side of the head. And in fact, from here, Sarah, maybe you just finish with both, actually maybe just start with both hands on your belly. And so those of you who've got one arm on the floor by the side of your head, bring that arm back for a moment and we can all just have the hands on the front of the body. Feel a couple of cycles of breath move through you. So feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you. And then you're going to bring both arms up to rest on the floor, either side of your head. So again, remember, you can take your arms quite wide. So what's more important here is for the arms to feel settled. And notice how the upper back feels, because I certainly noticed when I took both arms up, it asks a bit more of the upper back in terms of undoing. So yes, in terms of the arms being settled, it's better to have the arms wider and the elbows settled down than to have the arms nearer your head. Good. And just again, that feeling, we let the arms settle down, but we connect with our breathing. So perhaps 3 cycles of breath just in this place. See if we can still feel the movement of the breath in the center of ourselves. That feeling of expanding with the inhalation and then softening and emptying with the out breath. And so one more time, just feel the movement of your breath through the body. Feel the expansion of the inhalation, the emptying of the out breath. And then you're going to lengthen both legs out on the floor. And as you do so, I'd like you to actively stretch. So keep your arms where they are. I'd like you to actively stretch into your heels. So this is a mudra now, sort of a whole body mudra, Tadaka mudra. And in this one, we've got this sort of, I thought it was quite good in the heat, we've got this beautiful image of our belly being like this temple lake. So we want to imagine our belly is sort of falling back and there's a pool of water in the belly. And we can sort of help with this image by focusing our breathing. So as you breathe in, try to feel that your ribs widen and you still keep that emptiness in your belly. And as you exhale, think about the belly falling back and emptying. So we've now got this sort of focus for our breathing. As we breathe in, we're trying to feel our ribs widen. And as we exhale, we want to try and feel the belly falls back and empties. And we can have this image of this beautiful, temple lake in this hollow of the belly. Good. And stretching into the heels helps. So every so often come to this feeling of stretching into the heels. Let's just have, if you can, at any point, if this is too much for your lower back, you can fold your knees into your chest. But if you're comfortable here, have 3 more cycles of breath, where there's that focus of the ribs widening with the inhalation, the belly emptying with the out breath. Yes, and you might find it helpful to add in that stretching into your heels, either with the in or the out breath, possibly with the exhalation. Very nice. And when you've had 3 cycles of breath, I find it pretty hard to count to 3 at the moment, you can fold your knees into your chest. And just hold around the top of your knees and do a little bit of rocking from side to side across the back of your body. Good. And then from here, you're going to bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And you're going to cross your arms over your chest. So as if you're giving yourself a hug. Yeah, so you cross your arms over your chest. Now come to, are we there with crossing arms? Good. Now come to start to tilt your knees and your head and your elbows all in the same direction. So you start to rock side to side across the back of your body. Rather than rolling onto your hands, just slide your fingertips out away from you on the floor. So we've got the knees, we've got the elbows crossed over the chest, we've got the knees tilting, and the elbows moving from side to side, and the head. So we're going from side to side across the back of our body. And from here, you're going to rock all the way onto one side. And when you arrive on one side, to start with, if you like, you could put your bottom arm under your head like a little pillow. But you may equally want to grab a cushion, because we're going to do a couple of things on our side. So if you're more comfortable with a cushion under your head, you could grab a cushion. There'll be another chance to grab a cushion in a moment. So I'd like you to settle on your side. You've got the cushion or your arm under the side of your head. You've got these roughly at a right angle to you, and then your feet are coming sort of forwards on the floor. So they're just underneath below your knees, not sort of tucked back under your bottom. And then if you bring your top hand to stand on the floor in front of you. So the first thing we're going to do here is this little side bending movement where you want to feel your bottom ribs on the floor, and then just try to lift your bottom ribs. And if you're looking at me, you won't be able to really see anything. That's it, very nice. You're just trying to lift your bottom ribs off the floor. So it's like you're making a little tunnel beneath you. And you could sort of try just checking, is this happening by sliding? When you lift your ribs up, there should be enough space that you could slide your fingers under there. There's not much more space than that. So just lifting the bottom ribs off the floor, placing them back down a few times. Okay, and then we're going to do a little bit of twisting on our side. Now at this point, you don't want to have your bottom arm under your head. You either want the side of your head on the floor or a cushion under the side of your head. So at this point, yes, Marie, do you want a cushion there, I think? No. What about Siobhan, Jan? Cushions, are you okay? Okay, good. So we're just going to do a couple of different twisting movements here. So the first one, you're going to start by, if you have your bottom arm just reaching out on the floor at shoulder height in front of you, and then you're going to, with your top hand, you're going to start to slide that top hand up the bottom arm across the front of your chest towards your top shoulder. And as you do so, let your head roll on the floor. So you're rolling from the side of your head towards the back of your head. And it's fine if your top knee is sliding on the bottom knee. Okay, that's absolutely fine. And it might be that you're very comfortable with this and your top arm can start to come towards the floor behind you. So we're just starting with the sliding movement of the top arm. That's very nice. So sliding that top arm very nice, up the bottom arm, across the front of your chest, towards your top shoulder, towards the floor behind you. And allowing your top knee to slide or lift to help you with this movement. Good. Very nice. So just think about trying to do something that again, feels comfortable in your shoulders. So you're not, particularly that top shoulder, you're not forcing the top shoulder to go further than it really wants to just yet. We do need quite a lot of space in this one. So make sure you've got room. If you are, so if it is comfortable for you to take your top arm all the way towards the floor behind you, obviously letting your top knee lift. So sometimes I let my top knee lift and then I support it in the bottom with the bottom hand a bit. It's lifted a lot. So if you're comfortable to come to that place where the top arm is on the floor behind you, you can stay there for a few breaths, a couple of breaths, and then we'll do a variation. And again, it could be that if you've come into the twist and your top arm is on the floor behind you, you don't need your cushion under your head, and you could pop it under your top knee if that top knee is coming up a bit. So that's always, yeah, that's it. Good, good. Okay, and then we'll try the sort of, I say it's a second option, and then this one, our top arm is going to be coming up. So the hand is not going to be sliding up the bottom arm. We're going to be taking it up in this sort of big, I always think like a rainbow, like an arc above us towards the floor behind us. But keeping that top arm quite soft and relaxed. So not locking your elbow. Good. And just again seeing how does that feel? How does that feel in your top shoulder to be taking your top arm up and over towards, yeah, sort of up towards the ceiling, May, rather than over your head. I mean, you could do over your head, but that wasn't the one I was thinking about now, but it is definitely an option. Yeah. And again, just notice how this feels in your shoulder. If it doesn't feel good, then obviously don't do it. You could go back to the other one. Remember, you can let your top knee move. You can let your top knee slide up the bottom leg. You can let your top knee lift a little bit. And again, if you're comfortable in this one, you can stay there. So that if that top arm comes all the way towards the floor behind you, you can let it rest there. Again, if you've got a cushion under your head, you might want to put that cushion in between your knees if you're resting with both arms, both shoulders on the floor, and your top knee is lifted a bit. Good. And just have a couple of breaths there. Yeah, well done for getting that nice big orange cushion there. So, okay. Maybe come roll, so it's quite easy. If you've got both arms on the floor, then you can come back onto your back quite easily by just lifting your top knee more and rolling onto the back of your pelvis. That's it. So come onto your back just briefly before we come onto side two. And or, you know, if you need more space, then you always get Jan to shuffle over. Yeah, why don't you actually, Jan? I'll probably put you a bit more. You can just. Yeah, so in your own time, come onto side two. So from your back, coming onto side two. And remember, the first thing we did before the twist was the little side bendy movement. I always think about making a tunnel for a mouse. Not that I've got any mice crawling around at my house. So remember, the first bit, you've got a pillow, you're making a pillow for your head with your arm, or you've got a cushion under your head. Knees are bent at a right angle to the body. We're just feeling nice and settled on our side. And then the first thing is we take the top hand onto the floor in front of us. We feel our bottom ribs in contact with the floor. And then we try to lift those ribs off the floor a few times. And this is when, if you're lifting your ribs up, it should be enough space that you could slide your fingers underneath. So that's a good little test. Just, you know, am I doing that movement? Am I moving my ribs? I could slide my hand underneath. Or if you've got any mice knocking around. Okay, and then from there, you're going to bring your head now. You can bring that bottom arm out from under your head if it was there, and a cushion under the side of your head if you like, or just the side of your head on the floor. We'll start with the first twisty movement where your hand, so your bottom arm's at shoulder height, out in front of you, and your hand is sliding up that bottom arm and across the front of your chest. And you can keep quite easy with this to start with. So your hand comes perhaps towards your shoulder, you're letting that top shoulder roll towards the floor behind you. Of course, you're letting your head come along. So as your hand slides across your chest, you're rolling towards the back of your head. And then just carrying on with that and seeing where you get to in terms of taking your arm towards the floor behind you, but making it easy, letting your top knee slide, letting your top knee lift. Siobhan, I think your knees could be a bit higher up actually. That's it, yeah, good. Probably still bashing into the radiator, aren't you? In fact, when I was doing this yesterday and I had all the furniture in here, I was lying, so I was the other way on my mat with my arms on my mat because I thought, oh, I've got no space. So, yeah, good. Okay. And again, if you're going to remember, if you're going to stay with both arms on the floor at shoulder height, you can slide, take your cushion from under your head, slide it between your knees. So again, just really decide what works for you. You might want to just stay there in the twist, resting and breathing. If you want to move on to the other one, where you're taking your, you're starting with your hands together, and then your top arm is coming up in this arc over the shoulder. So it's like you're drawing a rainbow over your shoulder. Just, yeah, seeing how that one feels. And again, it's really up to you whether you want to keep moving or whether you want to settle in the twist. So settling in the twist is when the arm is on the floor behind us. Maybe we've taken our cushion and placed it between our knees, and we're just settling there for a couple of breaths. Good. Lovely. So if you're wanting to have a few breaths in your twist, do so now, because we're going to be moving back onto our backs and coming to a little bit more breathing in a moment. So just a couple more breaths in your twist. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you, and then, roll over onto, again, so when you've got both arms on the floor, it's quite easy to come onto your back just by bringing one knee up and rolling onto your back. So we're going to do a little bit of breathing on our back. So you can settle however's comfortable with your knees bent or your legs long. And we're going to do actually a breathing exercise now, a pranayama now. So just quite an easy way. So what I'd like you to do is bring your hands onto your low ribs. So it might be quite good to have your thumbs coming around towards the sort of low side ribs, sorry. So your thumbs are coming around towards the back of your rib, that's it, your ribs, and your fingers towards the front. Good. And so to start with, just connect with the feeling of your breath moving in those low ribs. So as the breath comes in, you feel those ribs widen. As the breath leaves, you feel those ribs narrow, hopefully. This is this sort of feeling of widening and narrowing around the middle of yourself. And breathing through your nose, unless you've got a cold or I know it's quite high pollen, hay fever. Good. And then what I'd like you to start to do is on your inhalation, you're going to pause. You're going to add a little pause into the middle of your in-breath. So you're going to start to breathe in, feel your ribs widen. And then you're going to pause your breathing for a moment and then carry on breathing in until you reach the end of your inhalation. And then pause for a moment before you let the breath leave you. And we'll repeat that a few more times. So as you breathe in, you feel your ribs widen. And then around about the middle of your in-breath, you pause your breathing for a moment. And then you carry on breathing in to the end of the inhalation. And at the end of the inhalation, you're going to pause your breath for a moment again before the out-breath leaves you. So try that 2 more times. So you feel the in-breath come in, pausing somewhere around about the middle of the in-breath, and then feeling the whole of the breath come in, and then pausing at the top of the inhalation before the out-breath leaves you. Now, if that all feels quite comfortable and easy, for the next couple of breaths, you could try adding in 2 pauses. So you're breathing in, say, about a third of your breath, pausing, another third, pausing, and then finally to the end of the inhalation, pausing, and then letting the out-breath go. But if that starts to make you feel a bit less relaxed and a bit more tense, just go back to the 1 pause. So I'd like you to have, I think, 2 more cycles of breath, either pausing once or twice in the middle of your in-breath and once at the end of your inhalation before the out-breath leaves you. And just, be as sort of easy and relaxed as you can with it. Just feeling that widening of your ribs and the narrowing, and just adding in those sort of relaxed pauses. Yes, and when you finish, when you've had those 2 cycles, there's no rush, but when you have, you're going to fold both knees into your chest, just so I know that you've finished. That's nice. You can have a little rock around on your back. You could take your legs up to the ceiling and give them a little shake out. Good. And when you've done that, I'd like you then just to lengthen your legs out on the floor and stretch into your heels again. So just, we're not taking the arms up by our head, but just like the leg bit of the Tadaka Mudra. And think about standing, because we're going to come over into standing now. So but think about it first of all. Think about being in standing, lying on your back with your legs long. And you can imagine, yes, if you stretch into your heels, it makes it feel a bit more like standing. And then imagine being in standing. Imagine coming into standing, and then just in your own time and your own way, make your way over into standing. And so, you're right, shock to come up. So when we've been lying down, and particularly breathing for a while, then yes, see how it feels to come into standing. Warm, yeah. So perhaps looking down at your feet, and then just settling into your feet. And what I'd like us to do first of all is just, we can do a bit of swaying, side to side and forwards and back. So settling your feet down, and then just moving your body over your feet. And you might want to close your eyes to do this, so you can let your body sway side to side. You can let your body sway a little bit forwards and back. You could even come to sort of circling your body over your feet. But keep your feet planted on the floor. So don't sort of sway or rock or circle so much that that part of your foot's coming off the floor. So the contact of the foot on the floor may lighten or become more heavy, but you're not allowing the feet to lift up. And obviously if you rock your weight back, your toes may inadvertently lift. That's fine. Good. And then little by little, stop these movements, or make these movements smaller and smaller, so that you can just settle down in standing. And you're going to bring one hand to your belly, one hand to your chest, and see if you can connect with your breathing in standing. So again, it might be that you close your eyes, and our body probably doesn't move as much in standing, doesn't respond as much in standing to the breathing. So let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Maybe just one more cycle of breath. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave. Good, and then we're going to come to the back of our mats, and we're going to come down through a sequence. It's going to be quite a simple sequence, and we're going to repeat the same sequence 3 times. So the idea really is that we can perhaps connect with our breathing a little bit more, because we're going to do quite simple movements. So if we've got our hands in prayer pose, we're at the back of our mat. We're going to let a breath come in, and as we exhale, let the arms come down and then up. So feel long and tall here from the fingertips through to the heels, and then start to gather your elbows in, folding forward. So you could come to rest your elbows on your thighs, or you could release your arms down into a forward bend. Have a couple of breaths in your forward bend, bending your knees as much as you like. And then when you're ready, you're going to start to walk your hands forwards into dog pose, really big handprints on the floor. And come to settle in dog pose for, again, a few cycles of breath. You could be bending one knee at a time. So depending how the back of your legs feel. This point in dog, this first dog, it might all be about just sort of releasing through the back of the legs. So maybe one more cycle of breath in dog. Feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you. And then coming down onto hands and knees. And on hands and knees, you're going to come into your cat movements. So rounding your back to the ceiling, dipping your spine down to the floor. And in your own time, you can sort of do some cats. You can do a bit of tail wagging. If you like to sort of mix it up and add cat and tail wagging together, you can do. I'm not very good at that because it's like too much for my brain to cope. But it can be quite nice to round your back to the ceiling and wag your tail a bit. So if you wonder what tail wagging, I think we all know what tail wagging is, just especially if you have a dog, you just imagine you have a tail and you wag your tail. So you could do your tail wagging by swinging your lower legs from side to side. That's obviously another variation. We'll just perhaps come back to a couple more cycles of cat. And then from a rounded up cat, rounding your back to the ceiling, you're going to rock your hips back over your heels and come into child pose and settle in child. So yeah, it's nice perhaps if the forehead touches the floor, or if not, the forehead rests on the back of the hands. And just how child pose is this opportunity to rest for a moment and to connect with your breathing again, to feel the movement of the in and the out breath through your body. Good, and then we're coming back onto hands and knees. And we're going back through dog pose and a forward bend back into standing. So this is going to be our little sequence that then we'll repeat a couple more times. So big handprints on the floor, tucking your toes under, rocking your hips up and back into dog. And just, how does this second dog pose feel? I usually do, probably with most things, I think it probably takes about 3 times doing a pose to start to feel that you're really able to settle into it, or certainly that's how it feels for me. So second dog pose, a bit of time, breathing, bending one knee, bending both knees. And from dog pose, we'll be walking our hands in towards our feet. When you're ready, coming into a forward bend. And again, have a couple of breaths in the forward bend. We can really feel our heels rooting into the ground. Our forward bend can be very calming and settling. And to come up into standing, we can touch the backs of our hands together, sink into the heels, roll up into standing, trail the hands straight up the front of the body, all the way up to the ceiling. Let a breath come in. Exhale, take the arms down in a big circle out to your sides. Good. And we're going to do that whole sequence twice more. So you can sort of work a little bit in your own time and stay where you like, depending how it feels. So hands in prayer pose, exhaling, taking the arms down and then up, feeling long and tall here, and then exhaling down into your forward bend, gathering your elbows in. So try to really, sense what your body wants. So if you're in your forward bend and it feels great, stay there. If you feel ready to go into dog pose, move into dog pose. Yes, any little movements you want to do. I can see sort of Jan sweeping her arms from side to side in the forward bend. That's nice. So when you come into your third dog pose, how does that dog pose feel? It might still feel that it always feels that there's room to undo. And again, in your own time, stay in dog pose for as long as you like. And then when you like, moving down onto hands and knees for some cat, some tail wagging. Yes, that's nice, Mel. You can do one-legged dogs if you like. That's fine. Yes, if you don't know where we are, if you've gone off in your own little world somewhere, we're on hands and knees, some cat pose, some tail wagging, some adding them both together. And then whenever you want to, that coming back to rest. So I suppose the other focus of my class today, which I haven't said at the very beginning, was taking it easy, but it's actually having these moments of rest. So rounding your back into cat, and then rocking back into child, and just having this moment where everything settles and quietens. So we've rounded our back in cat, we've rocked back into child. And we just have this little quiet moment where everything settles. We feel the movement of the breath within us. We make sure our shoulders are really soft and relaxed. We give our weight to the floor. And it might be you want to stay with that rest. And just try again and judge for yourself. And then obviously from here, it's dog pose into a forward bend, back into standing. So, whenever you want to. I think we're in a few different places today on Zoom. So we've got different temperatures. So that might mean you want to move more slowly or quickly than somebody else, and that's fine. So yes, fourth dog pose. Baby, it's starting to. That's very nice, Lynn. That's lovely. Dog, forward bend. Just again in your own time. Rolling up into standing. Again, there's no rush. You also don't need to, a little water break exactly when you arrive in standing. Might be the time to have a drink of water. Good. And then we'll do this little sequence one last time. And again, just really think about, what your body needs, how you'd like to, any little extra movements you want to add in are good, and staying as long in each bit as you like. So hands in prayer pose at the back of your mat. Let a breath come in as you exhale. Take your arms down and then up. Feel long and tall, and then that rounding forwards, curving down into your forward bend. Again, how does it feel? Maybe it's starting to undo a bit more now. Yes, and you're sweeping of your arms side to side. Walking on into dog pose. How does dog pose feel now? Maybe there's that feeling that things are undoing. And it's all depends on temperature, what you've been doing in the rest of your week. Very nice dogs, everyone. Good. Yes, again, if you fancy any of those one-leg dogs, you can do them. And also you can come down onto hands and knees, and then cat, tail wagging. Lovely. So when we're moving in cat pose, it might be nice in this lot of cat to just be aware of your breathing. When are you breathing in? When are you breathing out? There's no right or wrong, but we could be a little bit more aware. Good, very nice face up dog, Sarah. Yes, so then if you feel drawn to adding something in, by all means do that. And obviously from tail wagging, child, cat, then we can round our back in cat and fold back into child pose for a couple of breaths. And again in child, it's just that moment of rest. Forehead on the ground or the back of the hands. Feel the movement of the breath through your body and let your body rest. Okay, in your own time, you can move up, back into standing through dog pose, forward bend, rolling up into standing. So I think this is our last dog pose. So if you're keen to do any one-legged dogs, you can do those. Yes, if you're keen to do any face-up dog, you can do that before your dog pose. Also, I was just thinking, yeah, I was really thinking coming into this dog pose, yes, finally this, you know, and I hope that's the same for some of you. Finally it feels quite nice and that everything is moving. So dog pose into a forward bend, and just, you know, how does the forward bend feel now? Taking your time and then see rolling back up into standing. Very nice. And when you come into standing, you can, there's no rush, you can have a little shake out, and you're just going to settle into standing. Going to do a little bit of breathing, but yes, take your time if you're still making your way back into standing. And before we started moving again, and we are going to do some more movements from standing, I wanted you to come back to, we're not going to do the viloma breathing, the pausing breath, but I just wanted you in standing to come back to a few cycles of breath with your hands on your low ribs, with the thumbs going round towards the back. And when you do this one, it's probably better to let the elbows come slightly forwards than to let the elbows go back. That just keeps you a bit quieter through the front of the body. So hands on the low ribs, you could close your eyes. Maybe 3 cycles of breath, so feeling your ribs widening as you breathe in. And narrowing as you exhale 3 times. Good. So yeah, have a little shake out. We're going to do a little bit, well, so it's going to start with a forward bend, but it's going to develop. So the first thing I'd like you to do is just come into a forward bend, and then in your forward bend your knees so your chest comes to rest on your thighs. So just, yeah, see what happens. Yeah, so see how that feels for you. From a forward bend, where the knees might be a little bit bent, then bending your knees more so your chest comes close to your thighs. And yeah, just see how that is. And can you sort of feel soft and relaxed in the shoulders and let your head go? And then you can sink into your heels and come back up into standing. Now, we're going to go back into a forward bend, but this time we're going to go on into a squat. Exactly, Sarah. So it might be, you might not have wedges, but if you know that your heels, well, the first squat, we don't need to put something under our heels, but the second one, if you know that your heels come up, you might want to put something under your heels, because I want you to be able to stay in your squat. So perhaps first of all, just do a squat where you're not putting something under your heels. So come back into your forward bend. Come back to bending your knees so your chest is close to your thighs. And then come back to bending your knees more so that you're letting your pelvis come down. And it might well be that your heels do come up, and that's fine. Okay, so coming down into a squat and just seeing how, seeing how your squat is, seeing whether your heels come up or not, and then we'll come back up and we'll go down into another squat. So if your heels do come up, I'd like you now to put something under your heels. It could be a book, it could be a cushion, if you have yoga equipment. So yes, so sink your heels down, come back up into standing, give your legs a little shake out. Marie, do you want a wedge under your heels? I guess it's pretty good still. So so we're going to come back into a squat, and this time we're going to try and stay in the squat and lean forwards a bit more by having something under our heels. So yeah, I wouldn't start with it under your heels. I would sort of I would go into your forward bend, and then when your heels come up, hop it under them. So come into your forward bend. You can bend your knees to a bit, your chest comes close to your thighs, and then as you start to bend your knees more, this would be the time to pop your wedge under your heels. And then and the idea of having something to support your heels is maybe you can stay in the squat more longer, let your pelvis drop. And also, could we perhaps fold between our knees a little bit more? So is it possible to let the knees come apart and let our shoulders or upper body just become between the knees a bit more? That's good. And look down and sort of look back behind you, between your legs. So we're looking for a feeling, and it may not be possible, you may not feel particularly floppy, is can you feel that you're ever sort of flopping forwards in this squat? Check in with your lower back, because it is a really big opening through the lower back. It's really good for the lower back, but sometimes it might feel that it's too much of a stretch there. And if that's the case, then just bring your knees back towards each other. And we'll then come back out of this squat. So it might be at that point, I would say at that point, get rid of your wedge or your blocks and start to send your heels down. Come into a forward bend, roll back up into standing. Have a little shake. When you come back up, a little shake out. So we're going to do one more squat. Again, have your block to your book or whatever to hand. But this time, once we're in our forward bend, we're going to turn our feet out. So it's a different sort of squat. So you may not need that. Or, So come into a forward bend with your feet side by side. And then once you're in your forward bend, turn your feet out. And then start to see what happens as you bend your knees. And your knees are bending out over your feet. So in this sort of wide squat. Yeah, and again, if your heels start to come up, you can pop some support underneath them. Now, the other thing in this squat, what can happen, particularly if you're like me and a bit flat-footed, is you can roll a bit onto your inner arches. So you could try, what's it like to slide your fingers under the inner arches of your feet? And just give the feet a little bit of support.
You mean without falling over?
Without falling over. Oh, that's interesting. You're crossing your arms. Yeah, if it makes you fall over, then you don't have to do it. It's just a possibility. And again, can you be sort of floppy in this forward bend? And just sort of let your head and arms go. And at any point, if you've had enough, whenever you've had enough, you're going to just use your fingertips on the floor behind you to lower yourself down so you can sit on the floor. And if you've got a block there, it's almost easier because you can sit on the floor.
It hurts my lower back a bit, or it kind of strings it or something.
Does it feel a bit of a stretch? It's quite a stretch. So
and you feel it in the fronts of your ankles.
Yeah. Yes. Is it all right now you've come out?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why I was saying that, because I think sometimes when you're in that for a bit of time, it does like that. Okay, so we're sitting, we're leaning back on our arms, we're giving our legs a bit of a roll. And then we're going to slide our feet into cobbler pose. And you can see how it feels to sit, lean back on your hands. And you can also see how it feels to walk in a little bit. I'm sort of trying to pull my buttocks slightly out of the way. And we could do a little bit of circling. So in cobbler pose, again, whatever's helpful for you. So it could be leaning back. It could be a little bit of circling. It could be a little bit of rocking. So you could be holding your ankles or your feet, or you could be leaning onto your hands and doing a little bit of rocking. So, yes, exactly, Jan. We could be doing that one. We could be doing this sort of side lengthening one, where we lean onto one hand and we reach up and over with the other arm. That's it. So we've done some of those in our tail wagging, and we did the little obviously mouse tunnel position. We were thinking about moving through our sides, and this is moving us through our sides. Now, Marie, the next thing that always makes me think of you.
Chanting,
yes. So from here, if you lean back onto your hands, you're going to cross your ankles. So even if you sit in a different sort of cross-leg pose, just cross your ankles, and it always feels quite peculiar to me. And then start to do a little bit of circling. This is a bit what makes me think of you. So, a little bit of circling. Okay, cross your ankles. And again, you know, you can use your fingers on the floor to help keep your spine upright if you need to. And when you've done a bit of circling, you've got two options here. Either you can lean back on your hands and just try and let your legs be heavy, or you can fold forwards over your crossed legs. So just again, you could try both and see which works better for you. Either a bit of folding forwards or a bit of leaning back, and then we will change the cross of the legs. Let's come back to, yeah. So it may be that one cross, good. That's it, Jan. So you could fold, you know, if it's comfortable to fold forwards a lot, you can fold forwards a lot. Okay, let's change the cross of the legs. So maybe lean back on your hands for this and change the cross of your legs, which I'm thinking this feels even stranger, and a bit of circling. So we're deliberately crossing the ankles, even if this isn't how we would sit to be comfortable, because we're just using as a sort of an exercise to loosen the hips a bit. And then again from here, you can either do a bit of leaning back onto your hands, just trying to let your knees drop and feel heavy. So that's one option. Or folding forwards over your crossed legs. So both are good, and just whatever feels more helpful to you right now. Lovely. And then yes, when you've had enough of your legs being crossed, lean back onto your hands, and you're going to lengthen both legs out. So you can take them just out in front of you to start with. And yes, then Sarah, we will take our legs long and wide. So what I thought we would do is like touch on this in sitting in the room. And then I'm hoping people have got some wall space they could then come and sit against. And it could be a sofa, Marie. So either, let's see how this is here. And then we're going to bring our back onto either a wall or a sofa or a bed, or Mel, whatever you look like, you've got some wall there. So you can be leaning back on your hands here with your legs long and wide, or I know some of you are very keen on this one, so you could be folding forwards, bringing your hands in front of you. Yeah. And so at this point, let's see, you could, let's start to, I think we'll move ourselves, because you can still be folding forward. So we're going to move ourselves so that we've got some wall space behind us. And I think actually take your mat with you, because then we'll be doing something else. Take your mat with you and fold it in half. And if you put the short edge against your wall, so it can be a sofa, is absolutely fine. Just something that you can support your spine on. And then you could come back to lengthening your legs out. And if you love sitting with your legs long and wide, of course, you can then fold forwards. And Jan, if that basket's in your I don't think so. I think you'll probably find like this.
I mean, that's yours.
Just leave it as it is. It's fine. Yeah. So in your sitting now, try and have your back of your pelvis right up against whatever surface you're sitting up against. And now we don't have to worry about our spine. We can just let our shoulders relax. We can try and give the weight of the legs down. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a choice now. You can either keep your legs long and wide. If you want to fold forwards, if you're someone who enjoys that, you can do that. Or you could come back into cobbler pose. So we're just going to do a few cycles of quiet breathing. So either legs long or wide, or feet in cobbler pose. And you can choose which you would prefer to do. So let your hands come to rest on your thighs. So cobbler pose or legs long and wide. And let's close our eyes and let's gather our attention into our breathing. And in fact, if it's helpful to bring your hands onto the front of your body, so you could have a hand on your belly, a hand on your chest. That's another possibility for the hands. Just maybe for 3 cycles of breath, just sitting here Feeling the breath coming in, feeling the breath leaving you. Make sure if you've got a wall behind you, Siobhan, that you're not letting the back of your head be on the wall. That's it. Try and let your head balance on the top of your spine. A couple more cycles of breath, just that feeling of connecting with the flow of your breath, feeling the flow of your breath through your body. Okay, and then what I'd like you to do is we're going to come back to our viloma breathing, our pausing breath we were doing earlier on in class, lying down. We're going to stay sitting, but I would suggest now that you just come into what's perhaps a more comfortable sitting position. So you could have your legs long, but maybe not so wide, or you could be in a cross-leg position. So I sort of like to do that. Perhaps it's like a half lotus, you know, siddhasana. So just, yeah, whatever's most comfortable for you. And we're going to bring our hands back onto our low ribs, so like we did earlier. And before we start the pausing breath, so you can maybe with the thumbs coming round towards the back, the fingers on the front ribs. Before we start pausing our breathing, just have a couple of cycles of breath here where we feel the movement of the low ribs. Feel the breath coming in, feel the breath leaving. And this time we're going to see how it feels to add a pause into the middle of both the in and the out breath. So we could start with the inhalation, letting half of our breath come in, feel the low ribs widen, then pause our breathing, and then carry on breathing into the end of the in breath, and then pause for a moment before we feel the out breath leave. And then we empty half of our breath, pause, and then we carry on breathing out to the end of the exhalation. And then we let the in-breath come in, half of the in-breath, pausing for a moment, carry on breathing in to the end of the inhalation, pausing at the top of the in-breath for a moment. And then starting to let the out-breath leave you, half of the out-breath, pausing in the middle of the out-breath, and then carrying on to the end of the exhalation. I'll talk you through one more time and then you can do a few on your own. So let your in-breath come in, feel those low ribs widen, pause in the middle of your in-breath, and then carry on breathing into the end of the inhalation. At the end of the in-breath, pause for a moment, and then start to let the out-breath leave. Pausing in the middle of the out-breath, and then exhaling to the very end of the exhalation. So try that twice more in your own time. Pausing once in the middle of each of the in and the out breath, and you also pause at the end of the inhalation before you breathe out. You've finished your breathing, you can rest your arms down. Just have a couple of normal cycles of breath. And then you could fold forwards on the floor if you, just fold forwards a little bit if you liked. And we're then going to, staying where we are, we're going to turn ourselves round so we can lie down and take our legs up the wall or onto the sofa. If you like, We haven't got a huge amount of time, keep it easy. If you wanted to do a little bit of, I think perhaps just the rolling up and down, or if you wanted to do a very brief shoulder stand, you could do. Or it might just be nice to lie with your legs up. So,
Sorry.
no, it's good. So probably the best thing is to come into your lying with your legs up on your sofa or up a wall, or onto the seat of a chair, and just sort of see what it feels like when you arrive there. And it might just be that you'd like to lie there. Yeah, quite nice to let your head roll from side to side. If you want to do a little bit of easy rolling up and down, if you haven't got a chair or a wall, you can always stand your feet on the floor and roll up and down in bridge pose 2 or 3 times. Or if you've got the wall or the chair and you want to use them, you can roll. It's very easy, sort of rolling up and down through your spine. That's nice, Mark. Good. And again, make sure whatever you're doing at this point just is not pushing yourself. But there is something that's quite nice about having the legs elevated at this point and in warm weather. Okay, so wherever you are, just have a couple more cycles of breath. And then, let me see, we've got yes, we're just a couple of minutes after 10:30, but I'm going to, so if you've still got time to stay for another few minutes, we will in a moment, we'll lengthen the mats out on the floor, and we'll just finish with a little bit more lying down. So, yes, so if you've got time to stay for another few minutes, which is very simply, if you lengthen your mats out on the floor, what I'd like you to do is lie down onto your belly. You're not going to stay on your belly, but lie down onto your belly, and then we'll roll over onto our backs with our bellies. So lie down onto your belly, maybe have one hand on top of the other and your forehead or your cheek resting on the back of your hands. You don't have to do that. If there's a more comfortable position for your arms, that's fine. So on your bellies, first of all, just giving your pelvis a bit of a wiggle from side to side. A little bit of wiggle of the pelvis. Then a moment or two of just settling, of feeling your breath on your belly. And then on your belly, you can bend your knees and take the soles of your feet towards the ceiling. And then start to tilt your feet to the right and to the left. Good, that's nice. Just nice and easy. If for any reason your lower back isn't so keen on this one, then just don't do it. Bring your feet back to the floor. Lovely. That's nice. Good. Again, keep it very easy. And then you can lengthen your legs back onto the floor. Just let yourself settle and rest for a couple more cycles of breath on your belly. So feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you. And then from your belly, you're going to roll onto your back. So it's quite nice if you can keep your head where it is. You literally just have to roll over. But if you would prefer to bring your head up the other end of your mat, I completely understand. I sometimes don't like having my head by a door. And that's it, lie down onto your back. Okay, that's It's Otto coming back from the dog walker. It on everyone. Right, settling us. Settling onto your backs. So just a couple of things you could do if you liked. One would be to fold your knees into your chest, take your legs up to the ceiling, give them a shake out. Sit. Good. And the other one, yes, you could do that. The other one would be to bend your knees, stand your feet on the floor, and just let your knees tilt from side to side. Very easily a few times. Good. And then just finally settling down. Just have perhaps half a dozen or so quiet cycles of breath. So you can have your knees bent or your legs long. You might like to finish as we started, bringing your hands to rest on the front of your body. Just feeling the movement of your breath somewhere in your body. Letting your body settle on the ground. Allowing yourself to rest. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
I'm just going to keep Otto under control.
Hi, Otto.
Thank you.